Welcome to another episode of the Dentology podcast, where we discuss the business of dentistry. In this podcast series, we'll be discussing all the non-clinical aspects of dentistry, from goodwill values, finance, marketing, how to buy and sell a dental practice, mindset, through to where you can invest your money in team management issues. My name is Andy Acton, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens. Let's jump straight into it. So welcome to our latest episode of Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. And today we are very fortunate to be joined by Ricky Adams. So Ricky Adams is a dentist, qualified from King's College back in 2008, a cosmetically focused dentist, recently sold his dental practice, a big fan of photography and videography, and a advocate for well-being. So we first met Ricky, it was through Clubhouse. And for those that don't know, Clubhouse was it still is, it's a live chat platform, it's a social media platform. And it blew up massively during lockdown, but it blew up and blew down quite quickly. And we had a wonderful couple of months on it. It really was good fun. We had loads of chats. It was a right gig.
Do you reckon in between there someone managed to sell it?
You'd hope so.
You'd hope so, but I don't think they were quick enough, you know.
No.
May 20 sold.
Yeah, and we had great chats, and it was really good fun. And then obviously our paths crossed because through Frank Turner Associates we then help you sell your practice. So welcome, Ricky. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you guys. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Enjoying looking at the sunshine outside. Yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day.
It's a very good day. Most days are.
Putting the laptop outside, but all you would see is just like this for an hour. So I thought, no.
You spend all your time squinting at the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good look.
So before we got into your dental career and what's happening in terms of kind of getting rid of the practice and what you're going to be doing in the future, can we roll kind of back to the beginning? What was your upbringing like? What were you like as a kid?
I'd like to say I was wonderful as a kid, but I think I was
going to say, be honest, Ricky. Be honest. Be truthful.
Should we get your dad in?
Yeah,
to give us the truth.
Other data points to really verify that, you know. So I was born and raised in London. I've lived here my whole life. I have two brothers, one older, one younger. So growing up, always a busy house, you know, lots going on. Both my parents were dentists. Wasn't something really.
Oh, your mum's a dentist as well. I didn't realise.
Yeah, both of my parents were dentists.
Right.
So it wasn't something growing up that I really gave much consideration to. I just, that's what you take for granted. It's normal. So I just figured most parents are like that. They both work in the same place. They both, that kind of lifestyle and everything. But now I look back on it, I suppose dentistry was a part of our upbringing for some time. Like literally dinner time conversations. It was just very normal.
Yeah.
What's that?
No sweets.
Yeah.
I said no sugar, no sweets, no mints.
That backfired.
Here's fruit.
Yeah, they tried that when we were kids. They were like very strict, no sugar, right? Growing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then around I think about age 8 or 9, me and my brother discovered sweets, and we were like, "What is this? What is this?" So I think for the next
what have you kept hidden from us?
Yeah, just kind of hid out, trying to eat as much sweets as we could get our hands on and stuff.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but no, I had a really nice childhood. Obviously, growing up with a couple of brothers, I think that's always nice as well. You never really feel alone, etc. And then, as you say, I went to King's College, did dentistry, where I qualified about 2008. I try not to count the years anymore because it's not as much fun when you realise how much time has passed between milestones and stuff.
Ricky, can I just ask, was it a conscious decision, or was it sort of almost like, you'd absorbed it like an amoeba? And did you think of any other options as career and make that decision to go to dentistry?
It's really interesting. If I'm honest, I'm still not sure, to be honest with you. I've really looked back on it, and I've tried to unpack it all and everything like that, and I'm not 100% sure. I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I remember when it was time to, you're like 16, and you get your they go, right, pick a career. It's like, well, who knows?
Choose your future now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, decide the next 20 years of your life. It's like, who knows what you want to do? But for want of a better word, I think I've always been a little bit ADD, and I could never really see myself at a very linear kind of desk job and that kind of structure. So I remember when it was time to kind of look at those options, I did work experience in a couple of different places, and one of them was with my dad. And I was just like, yo, you just basically play with toys all day long. Yeah, you're just playing around buildings. This is basically like Meccano in someone's mouth. I'm great at Meccano. I could definitely do this. You know?
I tell you what, that playing with toys, you've learnt that skill well.
I'm not good.
You love your toys.
Yeah, I do. It's still the same. So, you know, it's one of the passions that I had getting into dentistry was about that, about the technology, about the equipment, you know, doing something. That's what I do think is amazing with dentistry. Like, you get to mix doing something with your hands with something that's still academic, but then there's a lot of other layers on top of that, from your communication to, you know, when we talk about running a business, it's like, you guys know, there are so many different avenues within that, from marketing to leadership to the actual financials of it, all that kind of stuff. So it layers a lot of different things on there. But I think what originally got me into, was like, you know, physically getting to do something with my hands. I really enjoyed that thought of it. I mean, I think now...
I think what's really good as well, Ricky, is that you say, I'm not sure. And I think there's so much pressure on young people these days to be sure about everything. People are expected to know, like, the answers, and if you ask a question, you need to have this clarity and this life plan and stuff. But to hear you say, I'm not sure, I think it's quite refreshing.
Yeah.
And perhaps that comes with a bit of maturity and the experience you've had. But so many young people don't have the confidence or the wherewithal to say, I'm not sure, I don't know. But that's the truth. The truth is that so many people don't really know what they want to do, or, you know, they perhaps know they want to be a dentist, but beyond that, they don't know if they want to specialise. They don't know if they want to work in a hospital. They don't know if the NHS is right when they were private. And I think not knowing's okay, because I think if you're not sure, then it keeps your eyes and ears open to
exactly.
other opportunities and other thoughts, which is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you don't allow yourself that space to say, well, I'm not sure, then your radar doesn't open up, like you're saying, to consider alternatives. Which is funny how you mentioned that, though, because I do think that does come a bit with time and with age, because at the beginning I would have never questioned. If someone asked, I'd be like, I like toys, I wanted to get into doing it for those kind of reasons, etc. Now, as I say, like when I was kind of my second year of university, before I went to university, my mum sadly became ill with cancer. So she was originally diagnosed with 6 months, and she battled that for about 5 years. And that was, now I look back on it and I can understand, you know, I was 16, 17 at the time when that happened. So as I unpack the process of why I chose what I chose, I can now understand that played a significant part in that. You know, it's not the overall factor, but it's a significant part in that I think part of me wanted to be like, you know, I got this, I'm going to take over the business, don't worry, that kind of thing, you know? So it's interesting to look back over time and kind of see what was at play there, and if that, you know, what kind of difference that makes as to your future plans as well. Which, as you mentioned...
Are your brothers in dentistry at all?
No, they're not, no. So, I'm the only one that chose that path. I don't know if that makes me the smart one or the not so smart one, no. But yeah.
So you qualified. So you came out. You got your qualification. You're now in the big world as a qualified dentist. Did you move straight into working with your dad, or did you go and work in some other practices?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We looked at that together, you know, when it was getting close to qualifying, and then obviously one thing I wanted to do was do my VT year, because that's, you know, quite an important step in UK dentistry. Yeah. And we looked at the options of him becoming a VT trainer, so I could just go straight there. Because even you know, in the last few years of university, I was already learning how to run the business, helping him with parts of the business already. So it was like, well, I could get in there quicker. But now, again, looking back, I'm really pleased. What we decided was, look, go elsewhere, because you're going to learn a whole different style of dentistry. You're going to get a whole different mindset from someone else. And then if that's good, which it was, you can bring some of that in, and it will be, you know, another perspective for you to have. Again, I guess... Really smart
decision.
And at the time, I hadn't really thought forward enough, like, I'm going to be at this practice. You know, if you had told me I'd be at that practice for a decade, like in the same room, probably would have freaked me out. Like, I didn't consider it. But now it's like, it was such a great opportunity, because one thing I think that's difficult for dentists is that we are in our own world. You know, it's nice to have connections, and if you're lucky, you've got some good other people around you at your practice that you can bounce ideas off of, go to help, etc. But day to day, we're in that zone. We've got a nurse. You know, if you're lucky, you get on with your nurse, but it's just you on your own. So having the opportunity to work somewhere else in a different environment was brilliant. And hopefully, I think
it is massively intense. I can remember we used to do, so my background is banking and, you know, used to lend money to dentists and stuff like that. But it was only when we first bought Frank Taylor's, remember we did a bit of consultancy. And I can remember sitting in actually a dental surgery, just observing. And I had never really appreciated how sort of intense it is with, as you say, Ricky, now it's you, a patient, and a nurse, but in reality your vision is sort of, it's just looking straight down in this mouth, and it's you know, we you know, if I get a bit bored I can get up and have a cup of tea or something, whereas you can't go, hang on a minute, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go and have a little break, if that's all right. I'm just going to go and have a little wander around the reception, have a coffee. It's so intense from not only a physical, you know, because the position you're in, but also mentally. I hadn't ever appreciated it until actually sitting watching a dentist work.
And also, I think the economics of dentistry is changing, but quite often it means that you're tied in that surgery for 3.5 or 4.5 days a week doing your thing, and so the outside world feels quite distant. Yeah, it's not something that's that available to you because you are tied into that surgery.
Yeah. I remember
SAS teach you, part of their torture training is they put you in a small room and play really loud, whiny music at you. Well, that sounds a bit like a drill.
It's a form of torture.
You know, if you looked at the SAS, probably all the dentists, no, bring on something else that's a little bit more tricky for me, please.
Are you suggesting that they should have that as part of undergraduate training, just lock you in a small room?
Right,
sound of a drill
that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? Yeah. And today you're going on a 7-day course with the SAS.
Yeah. It's
So
funny,
you did your VT somewhere else, which was obviously a good experience, and it broadened you out, and then you went and then worked in the family practice.
Yeah, so probably would have been around 2009, something like that. That's when I would have gone and joined Dad at Adams Dental, and then more or less, I've been there ever since. You know,
right? Yeah. And how did that work? Because obviously you've got your dad, who, you know, is highly experienced, running a really successful dental practice, and then you kind of got the young.
Trying to avoid the word older, aren't you?
Yeah, because Andy knows it's being recorded, and I'm just going to get the excerpts of it and send it to Dad.
I'm probably closer to your dad's age than your age.
I'm definitely closer to your dad's age than your age.
And so, but you've got the two dynamics, haven't you? You've got, you know, someone that's young and hungry and enthusiastic, and your dad's run the business for a while, and by virtue of that, quite often, and you can get set in your ways. So you've got that kind of old, established, I know what I'm doing, young, excitable energy, and then you've got the dynamic of father and son as well. How did that melting pot kind of work to start with?
And can I just ask another question before you answer? Did you live at home at the time?
Oh, that's a good question. I lived home. So after my VT year, I came home and I was like, I need to save money for a deposit on a house. So I planned to live at home for 6 months. A year and a half later, I bought my house.
So I'm just thinking when you're adding in all that dynamic. Sorry, answer the question. Sorry, now I was thinking that's an extra dynamic, isn't it? Not only have you got all those things Andy mentioned, but I've got to go home.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, all in all, I'm really lucky. You know, you've met my dad. We get on amazingly. Yeah, and he's a very cool guy. Just it's effortless. And honestly, like you're saying, when it is like you work together, you live together, you're planning the business, like every second of every day, it could be a lot, you know. But no, we were really lucky, and I think that like, as you say, really, those two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Like, Dad's been around forever. I mean, he's now been like over 40 years he's been doing dentistry, and he's successful at what he does. He has a very, very loyal patient database. You know, he's one of those dentists that people rave about, and they'll wait a long time to see him, etc. One of the things that initially I remember moving into the practice was like, there's no technology in there at all, no website, no computer, everything on paper, you know, the old record cards, all that kind of stuff. So I remember like our first conversation with me explaining, look, we're going to go digital, yeah? We're going to get to the stage where everything's computers. It's your choice. Do you want to do that painfully slowly, or should we just get it done? Let's upgrade everything all at once, blah, blah, blah. And like with most of our decisions, we kind of landed somewhere in the middle there. Like if I had my choice, it would have been, well, I'm going out, I'm going to get 5 computers, we're going to upgrade everything, we do everything all at once and it's done. I think if Dad had his way, it would have maybe never happened, I don't know. But, you know, we incrementally introduced that kind of thing in. Like, for example, we had bringing Exact in was like a massive, now it's like obvious, everyone's got, you know, that kind of stuff. But 12 years ago, you know, it was a change in mindset for people. So we started just with the reception desk. Then we went, you know, digital for all the notes. Then we got our iTerra and things kind of grew from there, you know. So I think for the business side of it, it always worked quite well because there was a bit of balance for each of us, you know. The clinical side, if I'm honest, like for me, that was one of the biggest challenges. Like I was aware from day one after my VT, having worked with my VT trainer, Rajan Sayal in Windsor, was just amazing for me. He was really, really a great mentor and taught me a lot. But I walked into our practice knowing that my skills were nowhere near where Dad's were, right? And nowhere near where I wanted them to be in order to deliver the kinds of work that he was doing. So I had to kind of formulate a bit of a plan of what I'm going to do in the interim while I'm getting those skills up, you know. And 2 things that I did straight off the bat, which I think helped very early on, was certified as an Invisalign provider. And learning facial aesthetics, right? Because those 2 things we didn't have at the practice already, so there was no kind of comparison there. Because if I tried going in doing veneers and crowns and whatever, it's like, well, Dad can do that better. So it gave me something unique to bring into the practice, and then at the same time in the background, kind of investing in myself and courses to improve the clinical skills.
It sounds like it went well, and obviously running alongside this, you said about building the clinical skills, but obviously there was the business side of things as well. And did you ever see yourself as being a business owner? And did you have a plan? Was there kind of a driver, a motivation? Because obviously we deal with people that buy practices all the time, and the motivation to own a dental practice varies from people that want to set the vision themselves, they want to manage a team, they want to control the finances, they want to set the clinical direction. Were you starting to think about what that...
more time.
yeah. What that might look like for you, you know, working with your dad as a co-owner in that business?
If I'm honest, I think ignorance is bliss. And I think that if I had really known what it was to run a dental practice, I would have gone, thanks very much, chaps, but no thank you. I think that, you know, and maybe I see this, you know, with some friends and things who are like, oh, I'm off to buy my own practice, it's going to be great. And it is great in many, many ways, but there's, I think, a lot to it that people don't realise unless you're in there doing, or you guys have extensive experience with, you know, dealing with a lot of practice owners, so you understand what goes on.
I agree. I think naivety is a massively underrated business skill.
So if I'm honest, I was really naive kind of walking in. I just figured, oh, this is gonna be great, like I'll be the boss, someone's gonna pay me some money every now and again, I'll be on the beach collecting my paycheck. Well, I was like, oh, that is not the case, man, that is not the case. And again, just like with the clinical skills, very quickly I realized there's a lot to this, right? And there's a lot I need to learn, and there's a lot, you know, I had different friends in similar but different situations, in that, you know, if you've got a big bankroll behind you, or you're in, you know, a different league, so to speak, where you can hire, I got a marketing team now, I got a compliance team now, I got a HR team now, I got this team, I got a front of house. Great. But if you're not, and all of that is down to you, and then you got the clinical work, and then you're still just starting off, so you're trying to, you know, improve your clinical work. Now I look back on it and I was like, well, I think the first 5 years I was most excited, but it's the 5 years I probably put the most into it, like just a lot of effort.
It is massive, isn't it? I think we've mentioned it before. We do seminars about owning a practice, and one of them we throw up a slide that sort of says you've got to be sales manager, marketing manager, HR manager, finance manager, managing director, clinical director, GDPR, whatever it is, a husband, wife, friend, sister, whatever it might be, and then you've also got to be a dentist, but that's 95% of your day.
Yeah, but also
the rest of it you have to fit in round it.
But going back to the beginning, when you're at King's College, you're learning to be a dentist. There's no time devoted to business, the discipline of business or anything, which from a patient point of view I want you to be a good dentist. Whether you can understand an Excel spreadsheet or devise a marketing strategy doesn't matter from a clinical point of view. But even as an associate, and even more so as a practice owner, if you don't understand those core principles, running a business is really flipping hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember again, like the first few years out, and I was really frustrated. I was like, how could they not teach us any of this? Like, they didn't even, to be honest, they didn't even really cover about discussing fees with patients, first time. I remember one of the first lines in private practice, like, first week in, it's like you're giving someone their treatment plan. I feel like going, I'm really sorry, here's your bill, and it takes a while.
Apologetic sale. I like that.
Honestly, that's how it was at the beginning, But I think, again, as you invest in yourself, as you become more confident that you're competent, I genuinely wish I could do my own dentistry. Like, if I could treat my own teeth, I would. And that's how I feel like, okay, I what's the word? I have faith that I'm good at what I do, because I would genuinely allow myself to do that,
Yeah. So you're still a young guy, and you've already sold your practice.
They say context is king, man. Context is king, but I'm going to take that I'm young. I'll take that.
Exactly. We'll take that as an excerpt.
It's all relative.
Like you say, you can put that on your Snapchat or your Instagram story. Yeah, we can still young.
Acted,
but what was the driver to sell up? And for you, was that a hard decision? And I know it would have been a joint decision with your dad, but what was your kind of process on that?
Yeah, it was a really hard decision, to be honest, and it's something that happened over a long period of time. Really, the consideration of it, the actual sale, and we'll get into that in a bit, because obviously you guys know you supported us through that. The actual sale seemed to happen all at once, right at the end, but the thought process behind it, rewinding back, when my mum became ill, I got really into, struggled with a lot of stuff, and I ended up doing a lot of work in the arena of personal development and that kind of stuff. So became an NLP practitioner, certified hypnotherapist, did lots of training with other personal development companies where I did some intense work then. And for me, that made a huge difference in my life, and it allowed me, like we were saying before, to kind of look back on stuff and unpack, well, why did I make the decisions that I made? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And, genuinely looking at what do I want in my life and in my lifestyle, And with that, Dad started to make noises about, one day I'm going to retire, right? Like, one day, that's going to happen. What's the plan? Do you want to do this all on your own? Do you want to get a partner? And so I think it came from a place of genuinely looking at, and if I'm honest, like I discovered probably 4 or 5 years in, when I was doing 4 or 5 days a week dentistry, I was like, this is not for me. Honestly, clinical work, Dad loves it. And I have friends that are like that, yeah? Like 40 hours a week clinical just sounds bloody amazing to them, yeah? And that's never been the case for me. So I kind of settled on a part-time lifestyle for a while of running the business, never had a practice manager, so I did that, and then did my dentistry. But even still, it's a lot. And I looked at, what do I want for the next 10, 20 years? And I wanted something different. And it was really difficult, because like we were saying from before, I kind of got into it, and I went with, okay, this is where my life's going now. I'm going to become a dentist. I got qualified. Okay, great. Now I just want to become fucking great dentist. All right, here's how you do that. You invest in yourself. Okay, 5 years has passed. Now you're a good dentist, I like to think. Okay, now what? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's grow the practice. Okay, to what stage? And a lot of stuff happens, and you're not really thinking further down the line than that, So, it was the first time I started to think, what do I want for the next 10 years? And I thought, really, if I'm honest, I want something different. I want a bit more space to explore other opportunities. And I just felt like having a dental practice, the way that we made it successful is 24/7. You're thinking about that practice. You love that practice.
Yeah.
What the key phrase for me for business owners is whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, that's what we're going to do, you know? And that's where I think between us, we were successful with that. And then, I think probably maybe now about 4 years ago, we started thinking about it. And again, it's like, well, I've never considered that. I had no idea what was involved in selling a business, right? I remember the first time I started, we were looking at partnerships as well. I didn't know anything about that. And then, considering selling and stuff. I remember the first time someone said to me, oh, the tie-in period. I was like, fuck, so what are you talking about? What's a tie-in period? They're like, like a lot of places are going to ask you 3 to 5 years. I swear to God, when someone said to me like 3 to 5 years tie-in, I could have cried, man. I was like, are you fucking kidding me, man? What's the point in selling? It's like 3 to 5 years time. I couldn't believe it, And again, it goes back to naivety. I think if I could give my younger me advice, it would have been, from day one, from getting out of dental school, have a 5-10 year plan. Consider your options as well. Okay, maybe after that you want to stay on, maybe you want to exit. But if you went to either of those pathways, what would you need, and what would that need to look like? So I think I didn't consider that until those wheels were in motion. Probably before we kind of reached out to people like you guys. All right, then you quickly educate yourself about, okay, this is what's involved. And then look at, where you're at. Luckily, we were in a good position because we had, like I said, we worked hard and we just continued to grow the practice. And by that time, we were at a phase where I was like, okay, I've taken this now to where it can go with this level of input, right? I know what needed to happen to get it to double in size. I was just really honest. I prefer not to do that with my next 10 years. Yeah. If the shit hit the fan and everything else went sideways, that was my plan B. I was like, okay, cool. I got a 5-year plan now. I'm going to do this myself, blah, blah. But we started to look at other options, and then, we looked at lots of different agencies, and this was before we knew you guys, and again, it's a very difficult situation. Like, speaking to companies, and you kind of feel like it's a bit cloak and dagger because you've got to explore these possibilities. You don't want anybody to know you're exploring them, but you've got to have lots of different conversations. And that's what we came across Frank Taylor and Associates. And I think through after like our first round, met everybody, blah blah blah, and we just like we feel right with Frank Taylor's. Like your team, I can't even remember. It's not terrible. I can't remember the point of contact that we had, but they were very good, And Dad and I think in many things when it comes down to people, will go on what feels right. And okay, fact and figures, that's important. Like, you need to look after us. We want to do it right, but these are people we felt we could work with and trust. So then we kind of signed up with you guys. And I have to check, but I feel like it was probably a month before COVID happened that we were like, right, Frank Taylor's, let's do it. So it's like 2 years of doing all options.
It was, yeah.
Fence, back and forth, which is a painful place to be as well, by the way. Like, it's uncomfortable when you're not sure. Once you've made a decision, it's better because you've got an idea.
What's that phrase they have? If you sit on the fence, you get splinters.
Yeah. And I think looking back on it, that and the 2 years of COVID were the most difficult because it was like the first year sitting on the fence. Then it was like, okay, we make a decision, we're doing it. And then it was like, yo, the world's on pause. Whatever your plan was, good luck with that, right? And,
but I think there's a couple of things in what you say. I think that thing you said about how long it took you to think through what you want to do, that is not unusual. We have so many people who could have thought about selling for 1 or 2 years before they'll engage with us. And they've been chewing it over in their mind and stuff. And in some ways it's a shame because we've been through this hundreds of times before. So if people speak to us a bit earlier, we can talk to them about partnership options and exits and time periods and deferred consideration and blah, blah, blah. We that's our world. And I think it's always a bit of a shame where people go through that themselves. And I think a lot of it is people don't quite know what they want to do yet. And there is that cloak and dagger. I don't want to talk to too many people because it's all private. But also that thing about working with people that you feel you can get on with. With a following wind, you might sell your practice in 6 months, but it could be a 7, 8, 9 month process. So I 100% agree. And it's funny because it applies to us as well. We also want to work with clients we like. We want to work with people that we feel we can build a relationship with.
Yeah.
So hearing from your side of things, actually, were they the sort of people who we could have those good but sometimes tough conversations with? Those are the sort of people that you want working with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I heard somewhere years ago, and it's one of those things I try and get out of my head because I don't like it that it's in there, but someone once said to me, for big life-changing decisions, the average time from inception to execution is 5 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's horrible. I don't want to believe that. But like now I look at it and it's like nearly to the day, like from the day I was like, okay, I need to consider my options, to the day where it's like you're out. That was 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It's a long time, isn't it? It's
yeah. So we have quite a lot of practice owners listen to the podcast. So for you, what was that sale process like from your perspective? So you've kind of hit the button, taking COVID out of the equation, because that obviously created a delay. From the point at which kind of it started to happen in terms of it was on the market. From your perspective as a client and somebody who owned the practice, what did that look like?
So I think the first phase was really understanding like how you guys value the businesses, what are the important metrics within that, what things between first point of contact with you guys to the sales done, what things can and might vary those, the costs and considerations within that, and understanding that, and then of course getting a valuation. And that's where, like, I think if you do have lots of practice owners, and like you were saying, for me, I wish that we'd come across each other years before, because if I had years, like let's say 4 years before that or a few years before that, understood, okay, when you come or if you decide to sell your practice, these are really important things, right? Then it would have allowed, like we were saying before, your brain to be on the lookout for things that could help in that process. And really, it's just, there would have been no negative to that. It was either A, you just never considered it, or B, maybe it makes it feel quite real when you start reaching out and you start having those kind of conversations, And even the process of then, okay, so you guys say, right, that's your valuation, we're putting it on the market, having to arrange viewings and stuff like that was really awkward. It was really difficult. Like, we've been with our team, a lot of our team been with us for decades, and we never want to lie to them, but at the same time, that confidentiality that you guys recommend for us from the beginning, it's really important, because from day one, a lot of those people you meet, they're no good. For whatever reason, it doesn't work out. If your whole team know that, you could have mass exoduses on your hands before you even got one foot down the line, so to speak. So that was very, very strange, so to speak, but no, I think, again, that's where, for me, having the agency, like basically Frank Taylor's managed all of that. We just go, okay, that's the window. Yeah. We rock up. We meet people for the first time round. Obviously for us, because it was start and stop. I think we did one round of viewings. Then it was lockdown. And then just nothing happened for a while. I just assumed dental practices, no one's selling a practice now. No one's buying now, blah, blah, blah. So there was a weird kind of hiatus moment there, and for me, again, I remember speaking with Dad. I was like, right, plan B, get moving. We're going on plan B. That plan B is we're growing this. We're growing this. We're doing this ourselves. We're getting started. So the first 6 months of that lockdown was about that. It was about quickly, doing what everyone had to do with the SOPs and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, even while the surgery is closed, make sure that we've got business that's drumming up, ready for when we're open,
But on that point, Ricky, we always say to people, even if you're in the process of selling your business, you should still run it on a day-to-day basis, like you're not selling it. Because if you start making decisions based on you're selling it, they're probably not going to be great decisions. So I think what you did, perhaps unbeknown to you, was the absolutely right thing to do, because you invested in it, you grew it, you kept your numbers up. And then when it got to the stage where it was back on the market, it looked even better. So it was a really smart decision.
Yeah, and I think that was one of our initial conversations. It was either with you or probably with one of your team. That was literally, that's what they said to me, and I was like, great, because that's how I plan to operate anyway. Like I liked Frank Taylor, and I was hopeful that you would deliver, but I'm not pinning my hopes on that kind of faith. I'm like, great, if you guys do this, amazing. If not, until the day it's signed, I'm operating that you fail and I continue and I go for plan B. And as you say, I think
that's the way to do it.
Yeah. And I think, for
otherwise
the
you
first
effectively almost run it down. We find it really disappointing when as in, it's a shame for the guys who are selling that they sort of get a practice, they then put it on the market, they then get it sold, Ricky, and then they spend the next 9 months sort of just taking their foot off the pedal. And the problem is that when it then comes to the end date and everyone's having to produce figures to make sure it's doing what it was doing, they've sort of managed to reduce the value of their practice just because they've eased off a bit.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, you've got to keep your foot going. Until that money's in your bank account, it's still yours.
Yeah. And if you think about that scenario, Chris, it's like that person has hustled their ass off for 10, 20, whatever years, and that last 9 months cost you what, 25% or something of your whatever it may be. It could be.
It's almost like running a marathon, isn't it? And then deciding that you're within the finish line, and you decide you're going to stop and have a little cup of tea and and slowly wander over and wonder why you don't win. It's like. It's a great message for anyone listening. Is if you are selling, until it's done, it's not done. It's still yours.
I think for us as well, like we were. One of the things we said straight away when we spoke to you guys, we were like, look, there's only certain criteria. Whoever it is that we sell, we prefer. We don't want to sell to a corporate, and we want all of our dentists to be kept on with their contracts honoured. We want all of our staff looked after. We ideally like a situation where we can stay on with kind of flexible terms, with the view that if everybody likes each other, we'll just keep rolling, And what I said when I met people, and especially when we met Dental Beauty, who we ended up selling to, and Amit, our principal, is that, my intention here is that when you come in, I'm going to hand you over this business, the best shape it's ever been in, with the best team that it's been in, with the best robust financials and equipment and everything, right? And that's what we delivered as well. And even when sale day came and after that, I'm like, I gave you exactly what I promised, right? And he's like, yeah, did. And that's what I would want, because that would give me, if I was the incoming buyer, that would give me the best opportunity to make it work. And for me as the seller who's hopefully going to stay on there, I want the best environment. I want to be around people who are successful, who are being successful, who are enjoying it as well.
And also, from a personal integrity point of view, we all want to be involved in a positive, good transaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you say, I think it's good for everybody involved, but for the profession as well. And in yours, it's slightly different as well, because it's kind of a legacy.
Yeah.
It's like Dad's practice. You want to make sure that you pass it into good hands, so that, when you're still working there, but in future years when you drive past it, you look up and you can be proud that that was what was created and passed into new ownership.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're done with practice ownership. You've now sold. Is that it? Do you think you'd ever go back into practice ownership, or have you got the badge?
Well, I got the badge. You can't take that away from me, mate. I got the badge already. But it's funny. Over time, I learned that I would never say never to anything. So I'm open to what the future holds. It's strange because going back to what we were talking about before, even though I didn't understand the thought process at the time of why I decided to get into dentistry, now I look back on those initial years. What was really comforting was I was like, I'm going to become a dentist. Okay, that's the pathway to become a dentist. It's very, thought out. I knew what I was going to do, and I just followed that plan. Then it was like, okay, now become a good dentist. Okay, you just need to do this. You follow that plan. Okay, now I want to grow my practice. All right, well, this is what you're going to need, and you just follow that. Now, like for the first time ever, I chose something because I was like, okay, this is not what I want, so I need to do this and get out. And if I'm honest, I still don't really know what the ideal scenario of what I do want is. But what I've done is allowed myself the space to explore that a little bit, and that's, people are like, what's your plans for the first year or so? I'm like, have a bit of time, explore those things and see what happens next. So I'm quite open to what could happen. The one thing, although I never say never, I'm 99.9% sure, is I don't think I would want to run a dental practice on my own.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
that's probably guaranteed going to happen.
Yeah. That point 1%'s coming. Put that marker down. It's going to happen.
No, I mean, even like the model of Dental Beauty is a very interesting one, or partnerships, or those kind of collaborations I could see. I think that, again, even looking at one of the reasons why I decided to exit, I think that that being a principal and running everything on your own is nearly impossible. Now I really understand the business model of dentistry. Even if you have unlimited bankroll and you go, okay, even if you have a full-time practice manager, you still need other departments. You need your marketing department, you need your HR, you need your compliance. That can't all be one person. But that's what it was. It was all one person for so long. And it's still the case, I'm sure, with many, many dental practices, right? So it's like, when people speak to me about, I'm planning to do this, is what I'm going to do, I'm like, you can do it that way. You can. And I did. If you're asking, it wouldn't be my recommendation. My recommendation would be to outsource or get teams in for as much of that as you can. What you can't and you have to shoulder, fine, but shoulder it for as small a period of time as possible and plan in to get all those other, departments working.
And also, it allows you to then focus on the bit that you're trained for, which is the clinical bit. That's the bit that you spend minimum 5 years learning on a load of postgraduate courses, staying good at.
Yeah.
So if you can create time to do the clinical bit, there are other people who arguably are better qualified and better resourced to provide those business support services, unless you're the sort of dentist. So somebody like Dev, who's obviously the guy that runs Dental Beauty, he's taken a conscious decision to invest in the business side of things. So whilst he's a qualified dentist, business is his thing now. But I think increasingly what you say is right. I think trying to cover off clinical and business and do the whole gambit as an individual is becoming increasingly challenging.
Yep, I agree.
So mind, body and soul has been a big part of you and how you think and that whole makeup of you. Has that, I mean, you talked about kind of when you started doing that when your mum was unwell. Is that something that could feature in your career going forward, or is that just personal interest stuff?
Yeah, a bit of both. I would hope that we can bring some of that to the industry in a way that's of value to people. Because, undoubtedly the clinical skills and courses that I invested in made a huge difference to my clinical career. But in terms of overall what's made the biggest difference in my life, I think those kind of, those investing in yourself and understanding more about yourself has made the biggest difference. And I think that if we can bring some of that to other dentists that would be of value to them, that would be amazing. I think sometimes we forget, we hang out with so many passionate, happy dentists who are like in private dentistry, etc., that there's a lot of stressed, unhappy dentists out there, and a lot of people, when I was at uni, I don't know if it's still the same, but it was, to talk about dentistry having one of the highest suicide rates, right? And it's like there are lots of people that for whatever reason feel trapped within our industry. And I feel like there's a lot of space for some really good personal development courses out there. I hope that maybe we can bring some of that in. I think that it has an impact for us on our day-to-day lives in terms of our experience of life and how enjoyable it is. But I think also in the areas where like I'm really passionate, it's made a difference for me. It's like, okay, well, when you're up to something, when you have goals, you have intentions, how can you try and keep yourself as accountable as possible and on that path as much as possible? We're all going to stumble and fall, but it's a question of how quickly we can get back on and then execute that which we were committed to. And that's where I think that really there's some real enjoyment and fun in personal development, and then that comes down to how we met and stuff on Clubhouse and everyone that we met on there. It's about creating a community of like-minded people that are interested in that forward movement, and all right, we might all have very different projects, very different avenues that we're on, but when we're all, committed to moving forward, it creates that that momentum that helps you along the way.
It's interesting because you're somebody who, when we first met through Clubhouse, you use the word collaboration a lot. And it's genuine in that I've got something, you've got something, you've got something. And I think by working together, the sum of those parts is going to be much better than us trying to do those things individually. And I think as we move forward, I think there'll be a lot more collaboration of people bringing their bit to the pie. And that will hopefully push us forward at a faster pace, which would be cool.
Yeah. And I
Ricky,
go on.
no, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I hope that now, as I start to have a bit more time, people are like, oh, what are you doing with your days off? What are you doing with your times? Like, yo, I don't know, but I'm feeling them. I'm always busy, man. I can't believe it, And one of the things, as you mentioned, one of my hobbies is videography, and I wanted to start, spending more time doing that, and I have done recently. And people are like, how's it going? I was like, horrible. Like it's starting, because it took me 10 years to get good at dentistry, and I'm good at dentistry. And I'm like, oh, I've got a new hobby. Now I want to get good at this. Okay, great. You get started, it's like starting at the very bottom, and slowly improving. But it made me think, I think that's part of my personality, and maybe it's common with a lot of dentists, that what we do enjoy is learning a new skill. Okay, at zero now, this is where I want to get to. How do I get there? That's the plan. All right, let's get going, So that's slowly starting to come along, and I'm very grateful to have more time to spend on those things. And, I'm speaking with Tom and some others that have been part of my personal development journey about how we can maybe create content, maybe create some courses, or maybe just create some content to bring the topics of the stuff that we've been talking about or been part of our journey for so long, and make that more accessible to other dentists.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And like I say, I do like your videography stuff. I've seen the stuff that you've done in gyms recently. Yeah. It's cool. It's really neat stuff. Really neat stuff. So we're going to move on to our two questions that we always ask guests. So we always like to wrap up with these two. And the first one is, if you could be the fly on the wall in a situation and you could look in on a scenario, what would you like to look in on?
I should really have had better answers prepared for these questions, considering that you answered at the end of your podcast, yeah? But if I could be a fly on the wall so the question is any scenario, yeah?
Yeah. So there's a situation playing out, and you can watch it.
And some of them they've ranged from super serious to extremely frivolous. So don't worry. Is the answer. There's no one that is going to go, oh, that's terrible, because they've all been like, oh, that's serious, and oh, that's silly.
Well, if I could be a fly on the wall at any point of time, it would probably be at the start of the universe, so I can see how the universe began.
Yeah.
If we get to pick any point in time, other than that, I know it might sound a really boring answer. I would, other than that, maybe around Jesus' resurrection, around that time, see what was going on, see what actually happened back there.
Yeah. Oh, they're two big moments in history, aren't they? You've not gone for the small stuff.
Jesus and the Big Bang.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Now, is there a connection?
Well,
sorry, that's just my faith coming in there, isn't it?
Well, and whether it will be linked to our last question, which is, if you could meet anybody, who would you like to meet if you got the opportunity?
If I could meet anyone,
fact or fictional?
Say again.
Living or dead?
Living or dead, yeah.
Fact or fiction? Living or dead?
If I could meet anyone, I mean, if I could spend time with anyone again, it would be to meet my mum and spend time with my mum again if I could. But apart from that, I would like to meet my grandfather, my dad's father, because he was orphaned at a young age, and it's really, if ever you speak to him about his childhood, it's a phenomenal story that he became the person that he became, which is just such an amazing individual. And he was orphaned at a young age, and I would go back to meet my grandfather and find out the story behind that, about why that happened and why he abandoned his child.
Wow.
Sorry, that's a bit deep, isn't it?
Yeah, I tell you what, that's one to hang on, isn't it? Right, well, just at the end, and abandoned each other.
You're going
to get people going, what was that? What's more about the story? Listeners and viewers, in part 2 of the Ricky Adams podcast, we will unpack.
But what was lovely was the way you presented that. It didn't sound to me like there's any judgment in there. It was just, I'd like to understand.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out more and understand it. It's not, I didn't hear any bitterness or judgment about it. It was just a case of, I'd just like to understand kind of what went on and what happened.
Yeah, and again, going back to the whole personal development and stuff, and that's what we realised, that, we may have our thoughts and opinions and emotions about stuff that happened, but genuinely, I believe that every human is making the best decisions with what they have in their life and in their mind, So when people make decisions, it makes sense to them. but we just don't understand it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's only a very few people, and they don't operate in the same way to everybody else, who set out to make bad decisions. I think people, on the whole, aim to make good decisions, and in hindsight or with additional information, they might have made a different decision. However, in that moment, you can only make a decision based on what you know, and it might turn out to be a bad decision, but it didn't mean that you tried to make a bad decision.
But they thought it was a good decision.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ricky, it's been absolutely fascinating, very thought-provoking, as I thought as it would be. Thank you for sharing your story in terms of selling your practice as well.
My
I think
pleasure, and
a
thank
lot of
you guys for
people...
your support as well.
Well, not at all. A lot of people don't ever go through this once in their life, so I think to hear a first-hand account of what it was like for you will be really useful to people.
Yeah. Brilliant.
No, brilliant. Really
Cool.
good.
Lovely. Well, lovely to catch
Good
up
to
with
see
you,
you again,
and no
Ricky.
doubt we'll get together for dinner at some point soon.
I can't wait. All right.
Excellent. Look after
Thank you
yourself,
very
buddy.
much, guys.
Cheers.
See you later.
What a brilliant conversation it was with Ricky. Really, really enjoyable.
Oh, lovely bloke. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, to have, because he's a young seller.
Yes.
You know, in probably, you look at most of the people that sell practices, that he's in the younger.
Yeah, I was going to say they probably start mid-40s, run up to sort of late 50s, early 60s, something like that.
I think it's fascinating, that thing, you know, mum and dad were dentists.
Yeah.
And did he become a dentist because of them? And what was interesting, he genuinely didn't know. You know,
I thought it was refreshing that he said, I don't know. We talked about it in the episode, because I think there is so much pressure on people to have clarity around what they want and what they're doing and their decisions, and it's not on. You know, it's all right to say I'm not sure, I don't know, I still need to kind of discover what's the right thing for me.
Choose what you want for the next 45 years of your life at 16.
Exactly. But also that kind of digging into the psyche and the emotions of selling a business, and how long he spent thinking about it. And I think we experience that. We speak to lots of people who've had this running around in their head for sometimes a couple of years before they start to engage and seriously start talking about selling a practice. And I think it is just that it takes a while to get your head around making the big decisions in life.
Yeah, that jump off. It's almost like jumping out of a plane, isn't it?
Yeah.
You worry about it, and then once you've gone, you've sort of gone.
And for Ricky, he had the added complexity of being in business with his father as well.
So it wasn't dynamic.
It's not just a case of the decision for him. It's, you know, his father's needs, and you know, his father's going to be older than Ricky, of course, and Ricky still being a bit younger, but also having a career in dentistry. So it's not a simple path to navigate. But it was good they got the result they wanted.
Yeah.
It seems he's got some thinking to do about his next stage in life.
It'll be interesting what happens next.
No, it's really enjoyable.
No, it's a really good one.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.